1 minute was the amount of time that passed between the moment officers located, identified, and ultimately fatally shot a man. 1 minute. This is an article by the Kansas City Daily Record.com by Sarah Matat. And the headline is, Brandon Atencio's mother believes he was murdered. Brandon Atencio, 28, was shot 3 times by Kansas City Police Department officers December 11th, 2014. Atencio was a suspect in an armed robbery 2 days prior and had a box cutter at the time of the incident. He also made multiple suicidal comments and cut his own throat before being shot. He allegedly charged at Captain Charles Stage, who now works with the Florence Police Department. It's when Atencio charged at Stage that he pulled the trigger in self-defense. Officers said Stage did not have time to pull his taser instead. That's what Paul Schultz, Stage, and Thomas Goutreau all said happened when they executed Brandon Atencio. Now, if you have a person who's about to pull a gun at you, you're allowed to shoot that person. They're about to kill you. Now, if you come at somebody with box cutters, and they said a couple things here. They said he cut his own throat. I was like, wait a second, that don't make sense. You can't cut your throat and then run and charge and then get shot. Maybe they meant he cut his throat a little bit. If they're saying his throat was sliced, what the fuck? That's bullshit. Some bullshit's happening. Now, he allegedly charged at Charles Stage, who now works with the Florence Police Department. So he charged at him. I said he had a box cutters, and he charged at him. Now, I assumed that he was charged at him with box cutters. He had box cutters. I guess he would have had to, right? Box cutters in his hands or in his pocket? Where's these box cutters at? So there was this incident in Germany where the guy was, I want to say he had a machete and the cop shot him in the leg after trying to talk him down for quite some time. 1 minute. 1 minute. Pulled up. Dude's dead. And then they said he didn't have time to pull his taser. So he charged him with a box cutter. And the only thing you could do is pull out a gun and shoot, but you couldn't pull out a taser. It's the same. It would take the same amount of time, unless you had your gun pulled already. And he said he had suicidal comments. So he's talking about killing himself. Well, that's when you back off and you ease up. Suicidal people can do anything, but maybe he needs to talk about something. Atencio was a suspect in an armed robbery 2 days prior. Had a box cutter at the time of the incident. Of the armed robbery or of the... I wish the actual police report was filed. Because if the box cutter was in the armed robbery, I mean, it doesn't say that he charged with box cutters. It just says he allegedly charged. So that's what the police are saying. This is a very good, well-written article. It seems like the lady who wrote the article, Sarah Matat, covered every angle. Did a pretty good job with it. I would say it's fair and balanced. So, makes no determination, right, and ends it off with the mother. So what the mother is saying is she's saying that the autopsy, the police officer's stories, the dispatch, and that there's a lot of contradictions. She thinks that he was murdered. She believes that Brandon Atencio was murdered. And then when they found out about the other shit that was going on in Fremont County, you know, she had a lot of information. There was one thing said, he said that he shot him twice, and then the autopsy said that there's 3 bullets. So Brandon Atencio was shot with 3 bullets. Well, 3 bullets seems like a minor detail. Pow pow, pow pow pow. I don't know. I feel like I could see, you being, forgetful about it. Don't know if I could say it was a lie. Now, there's one part of the equation I didn't understand. If he had the gun pointed out, why couldn't he pull out his taser? Well, he had already had his gun drawn. And so when he had his gun drawn, the guy was chasing him. He couldn't have reached and, tried to get his taser at that point. And so they said he waited for, as long as he could, waited, and then just had to shoot him. And the mother, it ends off with she's the one that called the police. She called the police when she recognized him on the footage of the surveillance of the armed robbery. She recognized him. He said he felt bad about it when she called the police. He said he was suicidal. There was 2 entities. The man that was actually answering the questions wasn't there. He said the 2 entities, the 2 entities that were there. And so it was like, well, was there anything else they could have done? They tried to talk him down. So he was in a robbery. The mom calls the police. The police get there within a minute, and it doesn't sound like she's around. It sounds like she's just figuring all this stuff out, piecing it all together. When he does call, here's what he says on 911 tape. Charlie 9, the scene is secure. We have the box cutter. He threatened us with it, attempted to cut his throat. What it looks like, he's going to be a fatality. I'm not going to do CPR until I get another unit. That's, I would criticize big time on that. You're not going to do CPR, you just killed the fucking man. You just killed the fucking guy. What did he shoot? Center mass in the chest? Or in the head? 3 bullets. And then here's something interesting. She says the trajectory of the bullets are shooting downwards. So are they on rooftops? Are they on the roof? Is he in the basement somewhere? She said it makes it seem like he was slumped over on his knees. The way she said it looks like the bullets he was on his knees slumped over. Downward trajectory. Maybe. It said he cut his throat. Did he cut his throat, drop to his knees, and then they shot him? If he cut his own throat, why would they shoot him? It scared him, maybe. It was jarring. It was shocking. They already had the gun pointed. Then he just does it. And maybe he started reaching towards him. I'd like to know about him cutting his throat. He cut his own throat. It said here he attempted to cut his throat. He didn't say that he cut his throat. It just said he attempted to cut his throat. So then, she says he was dead in 1 minute. It says, why are you trying to save him when he's dead? That's not the question I have. You just killed him, so CPR, right? He should have given him CPR right then and there. If he had a vengeance, if he hated the guy, yeah, I guess you wouldn't put your mouth on another man's mouth that you hated, that you wanted to see die. And it says until he gets another unit. So let's assume it's self-defense. He killed him because he let him die there on the floor. Attempt to CPR. Was it a kill shot? Definitely a kill shot. Seems like you just watched him bleed out, shot him, watched him bleed out. Stage. And then he's at the Florence Police Department. Why'd he go somewhere else? Small questions, but, the major questions. He kills him, doesn't give him CPR. The bullets, 3 bullets, the trajectory is going down. So let's keep going. He says that the CBI's investigation was crap. They collected and bagged evidence, but just give it back to the police. Something about gunpowder. If there was any gunpowder on her son's shirt. If there was gunpowder, I guess that would be at close range. And then they're being real careful, cutting clothes off a dead kid. Oh, that's interesting. There was bruise marks on his back that appeared to be knee marks. Bruise marks on his back. Why? Now what's happening? He cut his... I don't know. Alright, let's keep going. Said that the CBI investigated it. The DA's biased. The DAs think they defend the police. So the tail wags the dog. The rogue militia. And this is Kansas City. This is where the electric chair. They didn't kill that one guy. So I don't know if they've killed anybody in Colorado for a while. But that's where they would do it. So interesting enough, right? When it comes to executions, it takes 24 years to get somebody who killed 3 people in cold blood. And yet, you go rob somebody and you get freaked out about, going to jail. And what the fuck was the mother thinking? That was pretty stupid. You recognized your own son and you called the police. So, I'm sure she feels bad about it. Could be on a wild goose chase. But there's bruises on the back. There's gunshots are going down. And then he didn't give CPR. I mean, until the next unit, this is going to be a fatality. He knew he was dead. He's going to just let him bleed out. Wasn't even going to try to save him. Try to save him. I know it might be weird or gross or whatever. Put your mouth on another man's mouth. But you wanted to save, right? The public. You're here to protect and serve the public. So if you're here to protect and serve the public, if one of the public turns psycho or whatever, well, maybe you might have had to have done it. Maybe you might have had to defend your, you had to have defended yourself. But if you're here to defend and, to protect and serve, you feel bad about it. And the threat is over. He's not attacking anymore with the box cutter and just lying there. Bleeding. Slowly dying. I mean, shit. If you knew he was out, I guess it depends on how dead he was. If you knew he was, on his way out, it might be, humane to pull like an old yeller. But if there was any life in him, if there was a slightest chance, a possibility, they said that when the other unit got there, they were doing chest compressions. They were doing chest compressions, so they thought that there was a possibility that he could be revived. He said he wasn't even going to. He was going to wait till the next unit. This is going to be a fatality. Why would you wait till the next unit? The next unit's, he's going to be dead by the time they get there. You have to do something now. Now. But if you're a psycho, if you have no compassion, if you could shoot an innocent person or, a person that tried to come after you with a box cutter, it's kind of scary stuff. So, but if they don't have a box cutter anymore, and they're just lying there limp, bleeding, and dying, are you so pissed off that they, came after you that you're just going to let them bleed out on the ground? So, if he already had his gun out, that's another thing. Why are you coming to the scene with the gun already out? Right? Why do you have the gun already out? If it's supposed to be taser first, so shouldn't you have your taser out first? And if it looks like, the taser isn't effective or it doesn't hit, then you pull the gun. Or maybe pull them both out. Hit him with taser, hit him with gun. So him pulling the gun out, and he's suicidal, you're pulling the gun out. You got to talk a person down. They just had a suicide by cop. So it makes no sense if a person is sad and depressed and sees that there's no hope, and then they get swarmed by all the police, right? Scaring and intimidating them. They need love, kindness, and compassion. They got a gun and they're waving around. Okay, yeah, you got to do something about that. But if they're just talking and you're threatening, you're, escalating the situation. So Schultz is the guy answering all these questions. He says he does feel for her. He empathizes with her, which is a good word. It's a good word. We all wish it would have happened differently. All right. So then called the police. Right. It was news. He called law enforcement again that day. So called him twice. She called the police and then told them come to get the police to try to do it. So I don't know. She called the police 2 times there. It says at the very end. So, you know, she was going. There was something happening there, but what were they doing? What was going through there? You know. So I read this other article, and I see a bigger picture. So there was more to the story. The first call was because he was threatening the family with a knife, and then they went to his house, but he wasn't there. And then they saw him down the street after he talked to his sister-in-law, and he was calm and wasn't going to hurt her, and said goodbye to his son, kissed the daughter or the niece or whatever, and then walks down the road, and then she didn't see him anymore. So then the police officers find him walking down the street, chase him, and then as they're chasing him, they said it was a short pursuit. He drops down to his knees, and he pulls out a knife, and he's about, I guess, a box cutter, and he's about to cut his neck. And then he gets up, and he says, "Fuck this," and then he lunges for stage. Now, there was another shooting here. There's been 3 shootings, actually, in this year, or this year that we're talking about here. When Atencio was shot, I think 2014. And they were talking about how one guy seemed like he had a knife and was threatening people to try to steal a gun, and then he stabs the cop. And then the cop shoots him 5 times, and he lives. He lives and gets shot 5 times. Now, Stage shoots Atencio 3 times in the heart, and then he calls dispatch, and he says he's not going to give him CPR until another unit gets there. Those were critical moments. They said 10 a.m. is when the hospital pronounced him dead, but is that when they finally arrived? She said it took 29 minutes. She was like, why did it take so long? I don't know how far the hospital is, but apparently it's not 30 minutes away. So what, maybe 10, 15 minutes away? So then that means that's 15 minutes you got to account for. They tried to attempt CPR. So he had said he's dead, so I'm not going to try, CPR until the other unit gets there. So that makes it sound like he just wasn't going to save him because he didn't like him. He's pissed off at him. Oh, I'm not going to. This is going to be a fatality. I'm not going to do CPR till the other unit gets here. He also was choppy when he was sitting there saying it. Maybe he was out of breath or something. But he said, here, we got the box cutter that he threatened us with. And the place is secure, And then they say subject. Well, then the subject, I don't like how they do that. But that's their story, okay? So, it said that the sister-in-law actually said, I don't think he would have ever hurt anybody, hurt a fly. So, to make Atencio sound like he's this, they got, a former shot, he assaulted a police officer, but he seemed like actually I think he looks like a gentle guy too. Pretty straight-laced, gentle guy. And then he was on parole for assaulting a police officer, and then you got that charge, written on. So they automatically, he assaulted a police officer, so we're going to be ready for this. We're going to teach this guy a lesson. So I bet they didn't give him much leeway. He's running, and then why does he drop down on his knees? And then he lunges after them. I don't know. Seems really, really bizarre. And she had said that she was going to call the police because she had saw that attempted robbery, his footage, the surveillance, so maybe that's why he threatened her with a knife. She was going to call the police because she recognized him from some surveillance video from a robbery. And then she calls the police, and then he leaves the house. So, I understand the story. They're very forthcoming with a lot of information. She has all those documents. I want to believe her. And there's some significant questions. There's bruises on his back. The not giving him CPR is psychotic. So, I think at the very least you could say he was negligent. But I don't know. How dead was he is really the question. And then they asked him about body cameras, and they said that they will start getting body cameras on the officers in 2015, the next year. So I wonder if this is why, body cameras came about. Does Fremont County have body cameras now? I hope so. And then it also mentions that it's Cannon City officers, which would be different than the Fremont County Sheriff, right? There's two different jurisdictions. They might, work in tandem, but there's definitely two different jurisdictions there. So there's the one shooting 5 times after Clark had stabbed him. So Hudson Clark of Penrose got shot by Andrew Sanders, and that absolutely does seem justified to me. This other one, 46-year-old John Frieda, it seems a little suspicious to me. They're chasing him, he's running, he's in his car, he goes down a trail, he's running, and they said that his hands was in his pockets, but then they say he was throwing rocks. We didn't know what was in his pockets. He could have had a gun. Well, he's throwing rocks. So if you're throwing rocks, you don't have a gun, and he don't have his hands in his pockets if he's throwing rocks. So that's a lie. And then they shot him. So they didn't have to shoot him for throwing rocks. And they said that this is in Cannon City, but it doesn't say who it was. It just says the officer. And then the district attorney ruled it was justified. So open and shut case for the media. They don't give him a chance whatsoever. So this one is suspicious too. I think Atencio, verdict is out. Frieda, the verdict is out. But with this Hudson guy, Hudson Clark, 32 years old, Penrose, guilty. And he lived. So kudos to Hudson Clark. Yeah, that's a kudos. Good job, Hudson Clark.